Hello, 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 and welcome to the Above Board podcast. I am Paul Jarvis, I think, and I'm joined, as usual, by my co-founder, Jack Ellis. Hello, sir. How's it going this morning?
It's going wonderful, yeah. Recovering from an ankle injury, but I'm doing pretty good.
I mean, we're podcasting. This is like, we podcasted 2 weeks ago and we're podcasting again. So I feel like we're on a roll. I don't know if you can count two instances of something a roll, but I feel like it's starting.
We're definitely back on a roll. I mean, I've been a bit flaky, but I think actually after our podcast last time, that was when I went outside and properly messed up my ankle. I should have just kept on podcasting. And I would have been fine.
Yeah, it was that same day.
It was after, dude. Right after.
Oh, man.
Holes in the ground. I blame the mice or whatever you get in the countryside. So
Voles,
that's the one. Yeah.
Voles are pretty cute. They have really long noses.
No, I'm not with you on that. No.
Yeah. I mean, they're not cute for ankles, but...
Cool. All right, man. Well, this is the episode where we talk about big projects and why you shouldn't do a big project, reflecting on past learnings, experience, and how things get to become big projects and techniques people use and techniques we use and what we're doing with the version. I still think of it as version 4, by the way. I know it's not technically a V4 release, but I think of V4. Well,
we haven't explained what's happening yet to the people.
No, but I just no, I'm going off of the conversation yesterday. I'm just thinking out loud. No, for sure. Okay, cool. So version 4 is the release of the whole new Fathom Analytics effectively, right? That's what version 4 is/was. I say is because it still is a new version. The only difference
we are still doing all the things we said we were going to do.
Exactly.
Just
the big
rearranged.
Change. Exactly, yeah. So it's a V4 encapsulation, but we're going to be changing how we're releasing it. There's no longer going to be a big release of quote-unquote version 4. It's going to be staggered, but it's going to be under the version 4 umbrella. And this change only happened recently because there were a few things that changed in terms of business direction and what we were doing that made me realize that we could suddenly ship things completely separate and not have to worry. But I will say, Paul, that even independent of that, my brain's going over, constantly going, could we have done this even with the constraints that we had previously, with like the thoughts on tiers and things like that? Could we still have broken it up? I think I'm going to start off with the situation that led to the shaping of V4, because we previously said we'd never do a big major release again. And I'm thinking back to how we got to both of us being okay with version 4. And I know the logic that got us there. And it was all technical. So this is an episode to help people avoid big projects. Okay. So if you're not ready for that, it's not the episode for you, but if you're building something, you're programming in your work, we're going to be talking about that. So keep a list, or actually anything, not just programming, but a programming angle. So if we come back to starting the project, for you completely rebuilt the front end to actually make it workable for everything we're delivering, because the current version is just not set up for team members. And, we're not, this isn't a half-assed attempt at teams. This is a full first-class citizen, or whatever the term, first-class support of team functionality. And so we went back to the drawing board. Everything was new on that. And then we also have completely changed how the analytics work. We've made them better. We've introduced more features. I mean, entry pages, exit pages, better conversion tracking, better real-time visibility, all of this stuff. So then I'm not going to go into every single V4 feature, but in my mind, it then produced this restructuring of the data to support how the analytics are displayed on the dashboard, And that would include moving around 30 to 40 billion rows, probably more now. I don't even know how many rows we've got. To then having to change the ingest infrastructure to allow that, to then needing to only being able to do that once the data processing agreement has been amended, which is a 30-day notice period, to then also having a fallback for if we had issues, and then also factoring in the new API and then the changes that would be required to the aggregations endpoint to factor in the data changes. But if you're launching it under a feature flag, you've then got to support potentially 2 data models side by side, and you've got to migrate them over, and then you need a way back if there's an issue. It all became very tangled, and that's when it's not like a defense mechanism, but that's like my intuition then goes, all of this stuff is tangled, therefore it's got to be a big project. We can't ship A without B and C and D and E and F because it doesn't make sense, or it can't be done for various logistical reasons. And that's how we ended up with V4. Another thing was like event properties. We're not doing this anymore, but we were talking about billing tiers, right? Different tiers within the billing, base and plus. We're switching up how we're doing that, so it's going to be more flexible. I mean, I don't want to say subject to change. I feel like we're solid on that.
Yeah, I mean, everything's subject to change until it's live.
Okay, yeah, sure. But like that made it so we had to then had to factor that in to be able to support event properties and everything else. And everything was just tied together. So I then always go, V4, big project, V4, everything's V4. Problem with that is it then delays things going live. And it also makes it very hard to know when you're going to be done, because you effectively end up with multiple gigantic projects within a gigantic project, which is not a good thing. It's not a good place to be in when you're a small company. Even a big company, it's not a good place to be in. But small companies especially, I think that's almost like a cancer to everything. But like, why did we get? I mean, you listen to my logic. We talk about the technical stuff. Why do we then get into a place of it's got to be a big project? Like, how do we break things up when it's seemingly not possible? That's the question. And like, how do you keep the awareness that it should be an MVP? Because everything I just talked to you about, I mean, we've got the solution now, it feels like, but how do you stay aware to know to break things up, to actually make compromises? We've stripped back a ton of features. The next release we're doing, scheduled to be, I won't give a time, but internal scheduling is pretty soon. Internally, no promises to anyone, obviously, but it's just replacing the front end, right? And that's a simple project. I mean, that's not a hard project. So we figured out how to do that. How do we not get to the kind of like version 5? How do we continue to just ship chunk by chunk? How do we detangle things when they're tangled up? You understand how the ingest is tied into the DPA to the analytics stuff. How do we avoid that?
I mean, I think so. V4 was even bigger than that, though, right? Because V4 was all of that plus all the new features plus the redesign plus, right? So I think it's chunking it out and like, let's build after we do the front end updates, then let's build teams. Then let's get that out. Then let's think about like the data modeling and the dashboard and the ingest stuff, right? And like just do it in projects, kind of like, and then work on the like 6 or 7 other features related to the dashboard, which the new data model would help us release, right? Like I think just trying to sequence it out and figure out kind of how to do it in a way that just gets things out the door. Like that's always my thing, is like, what can we do to just like get things out the door? Because I hate when it's just like when nothing is happening on the outside, even though I know a lot is happening on the inside. But our customers, if they don't see like things that we've been saying that are coming, then I feel like that kind of sucks and that stresses me out. Yeah, so just thinking about like how we can get that momentum happening, we can get that like terminal velocity to like get out of this stratosphere into like the next one with like a new version. Because it's hard, right? Because like we built the version of Fathom that we have now, we built knowing what we knew at that time. And now it's been a few years and you and I and the other people on our team know quite a bit more. quite a bit more about like data at scale. We know quite a bit more about analytics. We know quite a bit more about how the interface of an analytics software should work. So we know all of this stuff and we want to put it in, but it's hard when, like, it would be easier if we could just build Fathom now from scratch, right? Like that would be the easiest thing. And like, I understand, I guess, why part of me thinks that it's a cop out, and part of me thinks like, I totally understand. That's why Basecamp builds like new versions of their software. And you can either use like Basecamp 3 or Basecamp 4 or whatever it is. Because like being on the other side of that, like I see how that makes sense. It also feels like a cop out, but it also makes sense. So,
business objectives and things. I mean, the new ingest changing, it's a whole new approach. I mean, that alone, and it's like, okay, well, could you use the current setup to build it the exact same way? And there are so many things that differ. And then you go, okay, cool, we're going to do the ingest, but we have to then pause for 30 days. We either have to give 30 days notice and then rush for 30 days to build it, or we have to build it and then wait 30 days because of things like data processing agreement, because you have to, and this is the compliance stuff, which is a headache at times.
Just thinking out loud, though, couldn't we? Sorry to stay on the DPA thing. Couldn't we say at minimum 30 days it'll be changing, or do we have to give a specific? I don't know what the legality of that is.
No, we'd have to check. We're not lawyers anymore.
Yeah, because couldn't we say like in at least 30 days? Or in a minimum 30 days, here's how things will be changing. And it's not even huge changes either, right? Like,
no, it's removal of processes. It's actually a big pivot. But then even then, we talk the new ingest is multi parts, right? There's the server side proxy, the whole, because I told you, I mean, I told a few people this. I built a prototype for a reverse proxy, but I could DDoS it with spending minimal money and with ease.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, the stress of that is not worth it. So there is like a aversion to the stress of being DDoSed, because like DDoSing a reverse proxy is easy because you can't rate limit on the server IP and everything else. It's, when I look at how I have been looking at it, everything is tangled together. That is what it is. But it's also hard for it not to be tangled together. But I think that what happens is, so you've got everything, picture this, right? Everything's tangled together. Say there are, let's go 15 things are tangled together. And then I try to untangle them, but I don't break them down. This is the technical side of things, by the way, and how I think. I don't try to necessarily break them down or reduce the spec. So I'm basically taking that state, keeping it exactly the same, and trying to break it down. What we've done in the last, I forget when me and you first had the conversation about splitting things up, but the attitude was we will avoid shipping things and defer them if we need to. If we need to break it up into something smaller, like your design, we're stripping loads from your design to get the design out the door to then have that just done. And then we've got a brand new base and we're not maintaining multiple code bases, like the whole 3.5 versus V4. We have sacrificed some things to be able to do that. And I think that's where my logic doesn't work, because I'm trying to keep everything perfect as it was. I'm trying to keep the ideal. So I'm trying to detangle it, but keep it exactly as it is, when I think you have to almost go in there with like a machete and chop it up. Okay, machete is such a, I couldn't think of a better weapon, but you have to chop it up into, you have to be willing to strip stuff back. And it comes back to, I mean, this is ages, like the lean startup and the MVP and what an MVP actually is versus it's not just this kind of no CSS crappy product anymore in this day and age. I don't think it ever was, to be fair, but what's the MVP to get something out of the door? And can we springboard to do the next thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. Like, I mean, this week, that's basically what I'm doing is I'm taking the V4 front end and I'm taking out all of the new features that we were going to build and getting it on par with the features from 3.5. And that's some work, but like, it's probably 3 days of work. Like, it's not a ton, like it's work, but it's not a ton of work. Like, it isn't ideal to take what I've already built and take stuff out of it, but it also isn't like, it's also not that big. Like, it's not ideal, but it's not that big of a deal. Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's totally doable. And like,
we get something live, and then we also the thing that I really don't like is the multiple branches and repositories where we have code that is different. I mean, like the version 4 code you've done is completely different, and then you've had to redesign. You've had to do 2 designs for certain features because we've been needing to ship it out. If we had done the migration of the front end, say 6 months ago, you would not have had to redesign anything. I think 6 months ago, yeah, you would not have had to redesign anything or done all that stuff. But here's my problem, and this is the thing that I'm trying to solve. How do we stay aware of this? Do we need protocols to, when anything is going to take, maybe that's just it. You are not allowed to have a project that takes over a week. Oh, but that seems stupid. No, because that's ridiculous. Over 2 weeks? Like, what's the period? You have to have something. And Basecamp do this, by the way. And maybe we need to have a look at that ship up book. But is it just
Agile framework and like all of that stuff?
Is that the stand up stuff though?
I think it's just the getting stuff out the door. I mean, even if it was every month, dude, like even if every month we got something done, and I mean, that was the plan probably like 6-7 months ago, is that we wanted to ship something every month and then do like a change log with a blog post. Yeah. I don't know why we did that. Yeah. I don't know why we did that, because I like that a lot.
Go back to talking point 2 though, with everything being tied together. If the lens was everything's tied together, how do you ship? You can't ship this without that, and there's no modification of the spec, right? There's no middle ground being willing to chop something off. How do you? That is the. I can't think of a better term other than thought disorder, but I think being able to actually rip it or chop it apart is the thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, I mean, on all previous projects that I worked on, we weren't allowed to change the spec unless it was taking something out of the spec. Like, we weren't allowed to add stuff to the spec, which I feel like is what we've been doing.
It's not a bad,
and I haven't done that before. Yeah, I haven't done that before in other projects, and I think this is probably why.
That's not my experience. I mean, even when you're building something, every single programmer listening to this will relate as well. Something will come up. Multiple things have to come up. Something you could not have predicted will come up. Even if you're an experienced engineer, you didn't realize that this problem was going to happen from this underlying code or database issue, or something will come up, and it takes longer than you planned.
So that does happen, but that's not adding new features. That's problem solving to get to the spec that was initially laid out.
So then it's a spec modification issue. So then, but again, that still comes back to the whole, there needs to be a limit on the time frame, doesn't it? Because it can't be
I mean, projects take as long as you give them to take.
What's the law? There's a law they've got for that. It fills up the amount of time you give it.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody will let us know on Twitter, or somebody will let you know on Twitter.
I can always email you.
Yeah, exactly.
So then,
beep.com.
Coming back to the thing, is the solution, I mean, the cadence thing, is it literally, but that's fine. So I agree with that, the shipping thing, but is it then just, you cannot have a piece of work that takes over a month to ship, and you cannot have a combination of pieces of work that take over a month to ship. Like, what do the rules need to be for us or a company looking to not be in a situation with a big project that takes multiple months that want to ship? What are the constraints?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we had a monthly cadence, I would be so fucking happy. So then releases, because then that gives me more to do. Because every time there's a release, I can do like graphics for it, marketing for it, update marketing pages, like changelog stuff. Whereas now I'm designing features that we come up with in the future that we may or might not even use, right?
Yeah, the long time frame between the spec build, because especially because there's other things going on too. That was another thing too. So then we're almost creating a kind of rule list here. No task/project can be over a month long. So that's number one. You think a month is okay, fine. So but then there's no big project. So could you build new ingest in less than a month? Answer is yes, you absolutely could.
Yep.
So then but then what about concurrency? One of the things that I really, really hate is trying to work on a project, and I've got, I think I've got maybe 5 or 6 context switches to try and review and merge. That always bothered me. What's the cadence on things that can be worked on at the same time, like when planning work?
I mean, if we were doing monthly projects, then we would all be technically working on the same thing. So we wouldn't have to, there shouldn't be any context switching, or it's like no project can take more than like 25 days. And then there's 5 days at the end for a buffer or, like to be able to do updates. Like there's always in software, there's always like small shit that needs fixing or tweaking or whatever. And then there's a little bit of time between projects where, because right now we've told support, like just hold off on anything that isn't a major bug because we need to get V4 out. Well, now that's not the case. So now I think there should be a little bit of space between these projects where we get a bunch of the little like niggly things that need doing, where it's just like, it's a faff to do them while we're working on like deep work. But there should be time every once in a while to be able to get these things done. Otherwise, like customers and stuff get thrown to the wayside in terms of like issues that they have.
So this is something. So where my brain immediately goes with things is every time I'm thinking about fixing things in production, right? Like even little things right now, my brain goes, oh, but we've got a whole new V4 we're working on. Like, how are we going to even remember? We'd have to try and do a kind of random merge at the end of it between two completely different front ends, which would be fiddly. That's where my brain immediately goes.
No.
And that was
because if we launched the thing, if we were working on a project, we launched it on the 20. I know we don't have 30 working
in the
days
new
a month.
model. No, in the new model. I'm comparing.
Yeah. So in the new model, we would work for 25 days on a project, ship it, and then the code base is up to date. We haven't done anything else. Like everything, and then we do a couple of the little niggly updates, get those live, and then we start another project, and then where are we losing the sync? Yeah.
So the minute we've got a bunch of different branches going on, especially when there's like a more complex branch, that's the issue. Like even having a front end. So right now we're all hands on deck on the new front end and we've all agreed to that. But when there's a new front end going on and we're also trying to do new things in the production code base, that wasn't working. Like that feels like you're immediately out of sync. The model with the whole buffer thing feels like there's no way to get out of sync because you're always working on a single thread almost, which for a small team is perfect.
Yes. Yeah, like look at how we did the GA importer. It's basically a good model because we were all working on it at the same time. We all got a lot done. We shipped it fairly quickly, and then we moved on to the next thing, right?
I think principle number 4 is we need clear deadlines. But we also need, clear spec. Comes back to the spec, doesn't it? If you don't have a clear spec, but you kind of like know roughly what version 4 is because we've got a feature list written down, but you haven't got a super clear spec for every little thing.
No, it's not a spec. It's just a list of features.
It's a roadmap. Well, it's a feature list. Yes, it's a roadmap. Yeah. And so, but we talked about teams, right? We have the complication with teams was building out the logic and deciding how to structure it and whatever else and migrations. We've done that already. Like, that was the hard part. But like you could say, oh, that's been spec'd or that's been partially built. We have not done that with a bunch of other things. And so how on earth can I turn around to you? Like, you ask when's something going to be done? What's the launch date? I can kind of give you a rough idea, but that's not said on any true knowledge because I haven't spec'd out, technically spec'd. I mean, we have spec'd out at a high level. I haven't technically spec'd it out because we're not there yet, which then that should be a flag for there's too much in this project.
Yeah.
So where I'm going, by the way, I agree with all of this. And I know we talked about some of this, but this is a bit of the 5-day buffer, right? I like that idea, but how do we avoid going into this hole again? So a team's going along, it's very easy to fall into this trap. It's a trap, that's what it is.
Yeah.
How do we avoid the trap? That's what I'm struggling with because I talked about this, right? My brain goes to tying things up and then I go, it needs to be a big release, else we won't get it out. And that's very logical to me. That doesn't seem like I'm being controversial. Do I need to just take loads of LSD or DMT and just change my brain? Because that's what I need to. I want to avoid that. I want to just be doing the regular shipping. I mean, let's do it in real time. Let's talk now. Let's talk about the new ingest. So I'm going to talk to this project, right? The new ingest is going to support over 1 million requests per second, probably as many as 2 million requests per second. Why are we doing this? We're doing this to be able to not have to worry about any kind of throttling from Lambda throttles, and they won't give us any increases on that, which basically ended it. So we have to think of a way to basically grow indefinitely without having to worry, and we need to be DDoS proof. So that's the business objective with the reverse proxy, by the way. Business objective, it makes sense, sits like by itself. Okay. So now you've got the new ingest. We can't use the same PHP ingest that we've written in Laravel Vapor because it's actually going to be going into S3 and then through to single store. Once it's in there, we then have to kind of go through it and roll it up into whatever data format we decide to do, and we have to build that and split it out. But so that's all fine, right? If we're building a brand new application, easy peasy. But now you've got existing data, and that data has to be moved into the new model because you've got a dashboard that's going to be reading that. Fuck it, I've already realized the first step, the project could literally be build new ingest into new data model and don't even worry about the dashboard. That's it. That's the break apart.
Yep, that's what I was going to say. Like this project is several projects.
No, but I'm going to say then, but I need to know what the dashboard's going to look like. Unless you, but that's it. Maybe you would end it at S3. The project, and we have actually already built this, I suppose. You could argue we've built this already, but the project then is you have only got to get it to S3. And then the S3 into the roll-ups themselves or whatever we end up doing has to be a separate project with the dashboard, like the new dashboard.
Yeah.
But then with the new dashboard, does the secret feature come in with it? Or is that secret feature, you know what I'm talking about? I'm not going to mention it because but does that secret feature then come with that? Or does it come with a future thing?
It could, but we could also figure out those steps. Like we know at a high level all the steps that need to be done, right? So like we work on the first step and we don't worry about all of the details of the second or the fourth step while we're working on the first step. Because things will become more clear, I think.
But then we can't change the spec though. Or are you saying that things become clear and that's when we focus on the next project or whatever?
Yeah, like we have an idea of the roadmap for the project.
Yes.
And then we focus on each of the steps because we know kind of what's going to happen on step 4, step 3, or step 8. But if we're on step 1, we're focused on step 1. Right. And if that means we need to go back and change something later, then we need to go back. Like that's what I'm doing this week. I'm going back and changing something. I know how it's built. It's not that hard to do. So I can do it easily. And it takes me like a couple days.
And that's true. You can change. And that was your thing. I remember in the last episode, you can change things. You're not afraid of being wrong. You're afraid of not being in motion. I always get this. I do get this dread. I'm not going to lie. I do get this dread of I don't want to fuck up a database migration because it's a very stressful operation, and like I don't want to accidentally miss something when I'm migrating 40 billion. Like that's always in my head too. So the whole emotion, you can do it again. It's true though. I can still do it again. Like imagine that the database migration, I choose the wrong sort key or shard key, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I've got to migrate everything all over again. It's still not the end of the world. It just means it's more work, and at least motion.
And it'd be faster than the first time you did it because you already know kind of what you're doing, just changing a thing.
No. I mean, okay, fine. Technically, yeah. No, it just takes ages. It's a high intensity thing, but still, the point is, it still can be changed. Is the reality. Yeah. So then maybe that's it. I think because I talk about the dashboard and ingest, and I go, oh, this is a big because I'm thinking about the V4 API. We're changing the aggregations endpoint to make it just better for people to use, introducing new metrics. I'm like, we've got to backward support the data, and then the V1 API has got to use the new data. I think that's the sign that things need to be split up. These things can be done, but you're kind of hacking away, not knowing when it's going to be done. And you're right, there's no shipping cadence.
Yeah.
I think we need, I think what I need, and I like this episode because this episode's super, talk about transparency.
It's just real time figuring it out.
Yeah. I think for me, I need some kind of accountability because my default, my whole career has been, and it's people I've worked with too, by the way, just thinking about it, not blaming, but just what I've been around has been like multiple big projects on the go. That has been the norm, even with a small team. And I think I need some kind of safety net almost to avoid getting into these positions, because like I don't know, I need a framework, and I think what we've discussed is good. How are we going to implement that? Is it just we have a more rigid schedule of planning? I think Adam Wathan does this like thing where he does a write up at the start of every big kind of sprint period. Maybe that's what we need, and we need to have everyone on the same page of what's happening for the next month. This is it. Like, this is the plan, and it's not just we'll see where we are in 2 weeks. It's this is the plan for the month, and then everyone knows where they stand. Is that what needs to happen? Just needs to be more disciplined on the planning.
Yeah, I think so. Like I like that idea too. Like that to me makes sense. Is figure out like at the start of the month, this is the plan. Do we agree? Do we disagree? And then start on it.
I think so. I think everyone on the team needs to be on the same page with that.
Yeah.
And I think everyone needs to be holding, the accountability. That's if everyone's aware. Another thing is I don't want to persuade you out of that, because I can talk about the technical stuff. How do we avoid me persuading you into a big release? And you're like a disagreeable person, so it's not exactly easy to persuade you.
No, it's not. I disagree with you all the time, and you disagree with me all the time. But we also change our minds a lot. So,
but how do I not persuade you?
Because that's the rule.
You need to enforce the rules.
Yeah. I mean, all four of us need to enforce the rules, and I think, we need to go to the guys and tell them. And like you and I are both pretty good at like if the people at Workforce disagree with us, then they tell us, and that's a feature, not a bug. They would never get in trouble for saying like our ideas are stupid if they're stupid, because
they gotta.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's the key, is that everybody is charged with enforcing the rules on each other.
Yeah.
Out of
This sounds like I was going to say the Soviet Union or like some communist country, but
exactly. Every project is equal. Some projects are more equal than others.
I do like it. And then this comes in, and then we get the momentum. There's so many things to tie together, but code has been written here and there. Lots of code. I mean, like Teams has been built to the end, right? We've got that code sitting in a repository.
Yes.
And I will say the Teams functionality, just to kind of tie back to the Fathom features, the Teams functionality is freaking awesome. It's not your, like I say, it's a first-class feature. We spent a lot of effort on it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's wrap this up by talking. I mean, I like all of this. This was a really good talk, cool. And I think
good.
Let's wrap up with talking about what we're thinking of doing next. I think so. The big thing is new design is coming. The new design is then going to be the base of everything else, and we're going to have it in the main code base. And then there's no longer two code bases. After that, this isn't subject to change. By the way, this is 100% what we're doing. I mean, Teams, because we're basically there. You hate when I say that, but I mean it's true. What's going to come ahead of Teams?
Yeah, exactly. I don't think anything. Well, the UI, but.
UI first. Yeah. So we ship that, followed by Teams, and then we move into. We haven't got anything in terms of what's next, but we obviously have. We do have a big list of things we're going to choose to ship. And as we ship each thing, we'll be doing a big kind of marketing or whatever around it, announcing it, and
talking about it, documenting it, supporting it, all the good stuff, podcasting about it.
So the conclusion is that version 4 is now going to be multi-part. Version 4 will now be an umbrella term for all of the... When does V4 end?
I know, it doesn't, but that's fine. I don't care. That's why I said it's not really a V4, but in our minds, we've been referring to it as V4 for a couple of years, so that's just V4, and who cares?
It's okay.
We're not marketing it as V4, really.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's just...
That's fine.
It's just these are the features we're releasing. So the rules for Fathom: no task or project can be over a month long.
Yep.
2, 25 days of project with a 5-day buffer to do niggly things or tweaks or updates. 3, between each project. Oh, that's kind of the same. Between project space to do the niggles. Yeah. Okay. So 3 is having clear deadlines and spec. And the final rule is everybody is charged with enforcing these rules.
So then there needs to be like a monthly thing, a monthly day where we plan the month. That needs to, and
Yes.
everyone is on the same page for what we're looking to achieve, and we have clear goals.
Yeah.
Because the
So
V4
write up,
nether
yeah.
is hard.
Yeah, a write up or meeting at the beginning of each month to figure out the project and give each other kind of marching orders.
It's really annoying because like Basecamp would be really good for it's just really fucking annoying. Yeah.
So basically, we've come up with we need to be Basecamp. No.
Oh man, no. Just I think in Linear you can use you can do a project each month and you can do like a summary. And you can
Yes.
write up. So that's
Linear's added a bunch of new features. I haven't had time to look at them, but
there's so many things though. It's like overwhelming at times. There's so much
and I
going
think that's another downside of just doing one huge launch is like people would miss features. And whereas this way, every time we launch something, it's a discrete feature, so people will see. And if it applies to them, great, they can use it. But if it was like one of 18 new features or one of 36 new features, then some would get lost and people would be like, the most frustrating thing is when people email us like, oh, I wish Fathom could do that. And it's something Fathom can do. I'm like, fuck, you missed it. We did something wrong because you missed something that we've documented and marketed and done all of this stuff for, and you still missed it. So what can we do to make it so it's easier to see? And I think doing it this way will help avoid that.
Someone made this point that your existing customers actually is a negative for them if you're changing the whole software at once and you're changing everything, all of this new stuff all at once. And I was like, I hadn't considered the mental bandwidth aspect. I was thinking about how we can market it and share it and everything, but no, the mental
change is hard.
Bandwidth.
Change is hard for people.
Yeah.
So cool.
Well, this was a fun episode, a fun conversation. I hope it was useful for people. We've got a cool list now.
Yeah.
And we're going to, shared enforcement is a great idea. I like that a lot.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we will catch you again in another couple weeks. Cheers.